Chances are, you've heard of J. Kelly, but have you heard of John Sullivan? Well, that's exactly what we're here to discuss today, because there wouldn't be one without the other, and you're about to see why. Welcome to Off Book, your one-stop shop for all things movies, TV, and most importantly, scripts. I'm your host Taylor, and today we're going to be taking a look at J. Kelly, the most recent endeavor by writer-director Noah Baumbach. Specifically, we'll be taking a deep dive into the film's origins, and in order to do that, we're going to have to take a look at another movie, Sullivan's Travels by Preston Sturges. Preston Sturges was a filmmaker that began writing plays in the 1920s before moving to writing for the screen in the 30s. As a writer, his first big film was The Good Fairy, which he worked on with William Wyler. His directorial debut came with The Great McGinty, which also earned him the first ever Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay. In addition to some incredible long takes, tracking shots, and inventive cinematography, don't even get me started on Unfaithfully Yours, Sturges is best known for his witty, hilariously truthful dialogue that confronts marriage, wealth disparities, and the American dream through every man's situations. One of Sturges' early screenplays, The Power and the Glory, is often considered to have been inspiration for Citizen Kane. Yes, that Citizen Kane. And the 2000 film by the Coen brothers, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, is named after the movie that Sullivan's Travels revolves around. Also, isn't it kind of funny that 25 years after Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, George Clooney is starring in yet another film inspired by the same Preston Sturges movie? Kind of a crazy coincidence. What is no coincidence is the similarities between Noah Baumbach's J. Kelly and Preston Sturges' Sullivan's Travels, which is why in this video we're going to be breaking down all the key moments together. Heads up, this video contains spoilers for J. Kelly and Sullivan's Travels. Now let's dive in. To start, let's recap. The 1941 film Sullivan's Travels, written and directed by Preston Sturges, follows the unique adventures of disgruntled filmmaker John L. Sullivan, who fears that his films don't deal with real-world problems. Sullivan takes his determination with him as he storms out the door of the film studio, takes disheveled clothes from the wardrobe department, and sets off to find out what trouble is, traveling under the guise of a homeless person. With an overbearing crew of studio execs following his every move, no matter what Sullivan tries, he only ends up back on the train to Hollywood, unable to escape his life of luxuries. Picking up a failed actress along the way, Sullivan stays determined in his mission. It is only after he gets into a horrendous fight on the train tracks, nearly dying, that Sullivan is launched into a completely different life. Plagued with a concussion, he ends up in a prison labor camp where he realizes that his mission was futile. It is when he is left with nothing that Sullivan comes to the realization that something as simple as laughter can be the greatest gift, because sometimes it is all that people have. That sounds familiar. And it's because J. Kelly follows a very similar plotline. Except it's not the 40s anymore, so Baumbach sends his protagonist on a different set of adventures. We meet famed actor J. Kelly as he wraps his most recent film. Egotistical and hermetically attached to his work, Jay suddenly panics when the things around him begin to change. His mentor dies, he gets into a horrendous fight with an old friend, and most importantly, he realizes that his younger daughter Daisy is leaving for college. Pushed to his breaking point, Jay launches into a wild series of escapades to chase after Daisy, who has gone abroad with her friends. On the train from Paris to Italy, flanked by his manager, stylist, agent, and publicist, Jay can't escape himself. Behind every door, another memory haunts him. It isn't until he arrives to his tribute in Italy that he realizes how truly alone he is. The members of his team having left the train one by one, devoid of his daughters, and with his father leaving the tribute early. Everyone except for Jay's agent, Ron, has left him, and as he hangs on the balance, Jay must reconcile with the fact that he's sacrificed the connections that matter most to make connections within the industry, climbing his way to fame. It is only then that Jay realizes that genuine emotional connections, which his fans have found within his work but which he lacks in his own life, are what truly matter. There we have it. Two artists of the screen, dissatisfied with their lives, getting on a train to find one thing, only to discover what they've truly been missing all along. John L. Sullivan, J. Kelly. But there's far more to the story than that. In reinventing the roots of Sullivan's Travels, Baumbach creates a tribute to Preston Sturges while fleshing out the relationships, dynamics, and emotional turmoil of the original film, transforming Sullivan's journey of poverty into an exploration of emotional poverty within fame. In creating J. Kelly, Baumbach drew inspiration from Sturges' storylines, his directorial instincts, and even some of his societal commentary. Let's break it down. What I need you to understand first is that the opening of J. Kelly is a direct echo of Sullivan's Travels opening. Each film opens with their central artist nearing the end of their stasis, completing their most recent piece of work as the seeds are planted for the journey to follow. With Jay, we get this building of motivation that we don't see with John Sullivan, who is determined from the start to get away. Whereas with Jay, it takes a tough reunion with his former roommate Ted and the departure of his daughter Daisy to push him into action. It is then that we get to meet Jay's team, the gaggle of people who micromanage his every move. Practically ripped from Sullivan's Travels, the team watches over everything this man does, from booking coffee dates to looking after his home. Jay's manager, Ron, even calls him Puppy. John Sullivan can't escape his team, and neither can J. Kelly. Every time that Sullivan ventures out on his own, he gets sick or hurt and is back on the train to Hollywood. From the moment that he steps into the train car, Jay is recognized by the passengers for his talents, transporting him back to Hollywood too. As the ride carries on, each door of the train is linked to a different memory that Jay steps back into, from acting school and film sets to a falling out with his eldest daughter, Jessica, that comes from his inability to sit through a therapy session with her. Despite the fact that he tells Daisy in the beginning of the film that she lacks the same emotional intelligence that he does. Foreshadowing? Maybe. Every recollection forces Jay to separate movie from memory, carving out space for the family that he's lost. Still, Jay can't leave his fame behind, thus it's his fatal flaw. Rather than circling back to Hollywood quite literally, he takes it with him. When he decides to take a tribute in Italy, giving him a reason to chase Daisy, he's upset when another actor has taken it in his place after not responding soon enough. When he excels at conversing with the train passengers, he struggles to connect with Phoebe, a teenager who is cynical of fame. In a conversation that mimics the broken relations with his daughters, Phoebe asks him if he has any regrets, and Jay leaves immediately, unable to answer that question. The most pivotal point of Jay's arc arrives the night before the tribute, when at a party, neither of his daughters show up, most of his team has left him, and even his father leaves, despite the fact that Jay flew him in for the event to have at least one family member there. After chasing his dad's cab down the street in sheer desperation, Jay stumbles into the woods in this very fascinating moment of surrealism that pulls us from the world of the film. Lost in fog and trees, he tries to call Jessica one last time, only to realize that he's too late. Jay's falling to his knees is hauntingly similar to Sullivan's final breaking point at the prison labor camp. More on the emotional significance of that later, but for now, let's turn to directing, for which this scene alone takes so much visual inspiration from Sullivan's Travels, pushing the forest in the middle of nowhere to the extreme. Remember how we were talking about some of the similarities in those opening scenes? The clearest similarities come from the careful direction of J. Kelly's opening scene, for which Baumbach used Sullivan's Travels as a clear springboard. Visually stunning, the opening of J. Kelly moves through the soundstage, picking up on different little tiny pockets of conversation and movement between each department, introducing us to the key characters that we're gonna follow throughout the film. This sequence builds directly on the long take that Sturges uses at the opening of Sullivan's Travels. Baumbach's 5-minute take puts full focus onto the state of the industry, using silhouettes and snippets of conversation to show what goes on behind fame, and more importantly, how each of these people lack a sense of self. For bonus points, Baumbach plays into Sturges' societal commentary as we crawl in closer to J. Kelly, who performs these deeply emotional lines in front of a neon Pepsi Cola sign. Set center frame. Jay is framed off to the side, and this Pepsi Cola sign is so bright in the center of the screen. And it serves as this final pinpoint in the idea that fame and fortune come before feelings. Money, what can I say? It's a raw truth wrapped up in satiric showmanship, which was Sturges' specialty as a humorist, and which is made especially funny by the fact that this may very well be an actual paid product placement in the film. As a writer and director, Baumbach underscores his central theme of lost identities through a series of literal and figurative deaths. The loss of his first director and mentor, Peter Schneider, reunites Jay with his former roommate, a friendship that died after Jay stole a film part from Tim. In an early acting class, Jay performs a monologue about death before his teacher asks him a very weighted question, saying, "If you're lucky enough to act professionally, you'll be lying for a living. The better you lie, the more truthful you'll seem, and the more successful you'll be. To be a star, you have to act twice. Once when you play the part, and then again when you play yourself. You have to really want that." Looking his acting teacher right in the eye, Jay declares wholeheartedly that this is what he wants, and that is the moment that seals his fate for the rest of the film. Don't act too surprised when I tell you that 3 central deaths take place in Sullivan's travels. The death of the actress's career, which introduces her to Sullivan, the presumed death of John Sullivan after the fight, and the scene where Sullivan officially hits rock bottom, realizing that his only escape route is to turn himself in as his own killer.
You're gonna get yourself. I killed John L. Sullivan. Wait a minute, what are you gonna get? I murdered John L. Sullivan. I'm telling you, you're doing the wrong thing. I'm a murderer. Will you listen to me before somebody... I killed John L. Sullivan.
In Jay Kelly, the scene parallel to this has the film's first true unspoken death. Jay's realization that he has lost everyone that should have mattered to him. As he runs through the forest, you can practically hear Sullivan's shouts of confession echo through the endless woods. It's the final scene of Jay Kelly that draws the closest parallel to Sullivan's travels. When Jay sits down at the tribute event that this entire film has led up to, he watches his career before his eyes among a sea of his fans. As a compilation of his greatest hits plays out on the screen, Jay looks from person to person and we get these close-ups of each of their reactions. It is in watching all these people connect with his work that Jay comes to reconcile with how much he gave in order to sacrifice those connections with the people who mattered most. It's then that this compilation becomes something more in his mind, a flashback to his 2 girls when they were younger, playing together in their backyard as Jay tries to hurry off to work, and for the first time, he decides to stay. Baumbach flips the order of the plot in Sullivan's travels, in which the cinema scene plays out before Sullivan returns home, freeing himself through the admittance of his death. While in the labor camp, though, Sullivan and the other prisoners are invited to a local church for movie night, where they watch a cartoon. Ready for this? One among dozens, sitting in the middle of the packed crowd. Sullivan looks from one group of audience members to the next, and it's then, watching their reactions, that he realizes how great a gift laughter is. Flipping the order of this and making that cinema scene, which is such a close, direct comparison to Sullivan's travels, the closing of Jay Kelly, gives us a really big insight into what Baumbach saw in Preston Sturges' film and what he took away as a creative himself. In both films, the cinema is where our protagonists have these major pivotal moments. The effects of Hollywood are brought to a front as both John Sullivan and Jay Kelly realize that the very things they have been running from are what they've needed all along. Even though Jay Kelly is a rather poignant film, this does suggest that there is hope to be found in artistry and in the film industry if we reevaluate what it means to be members of an industry. On that note, I think it's time to take a closer look at the main themes of these films.
Jay Kelly. Jay Kelly. Jay.
From the opening minutes of Jay Kelly, it is clear that this film is all about identity. What does it mean to be yourself with your family? What does it mean to be yourself with your friends? Most importantly, what does it mean to be yourself when everybody has a different idea or presumption of what that is or should be? In a race away from oneself, John Sullivan struggles to get where Jay already is, lacking his personal identity. When we meet Jay Kelly, he is an out-of-touch actor whose deepest emotions emerge when he's on screen. We see this again and again as wherever he goes, he fixates on the nearest camera, whether it's Daisy's new love's camcorder or someone holding up a phone. It's misconnections that finally strike a chord with Jay, but as we learn again and again, he's too late. It happens with his daughters, it happens with his former roommate Tim, it happens with his first director, and throughout the film it happens one by one with the members of his personal team, who finally realize that Jay isn't always going to come first unless they let him. What's so important about Jay's team is how Baumbach uses it as a sounding board and a domino effect for this lack of identity and for the central identity that is Hollywood, because all of these people are missing out on family connections, helping out their loved ones, and big job opportunities because Jay always comes first until they get off the train and he doesn't. It's when Jay becomes determined to break free of the vice grip of his team that we see the extent to which his life is each of their lives. What was once a point of humor in Sullivan's travels, each of the team members doting over their beloved director and in turn their money, is now fleshed out relationships that show the sacrifices that everyone makes for this collective fame. It's because of Jay that his manager Ron and his publicist Liz don't pursue a relationship that was sparking 20 years ago. Jay's stylist nearly misses out on a big job opportunity, and Ron's family has to fight for his attention while they're practically falling apart. It's his long-standing relationship with Ron, the one who he takes the most for granted, that is the last thing that Jay has. Finally, after losing every other person in his life, Jay fulfills his mission by recognizing Ron as his friend, whereas Sullivan seeks to learn what real trouble is, only to understand the true value of laughter. Jay Kelly must learn what it is to be a normal man with a heart, reconciling with the fact that the connections he lost are the ones he needed the most all along. What makes the ending of Jay Kelly so heart-wrenching is that while John Sullivan can go make a different movie or change the type of director that he wants to be in Hollywood, Jay Kelly can't go back and relive those formative years as a father and a friend. If you've ever listened to Bo Burnham, you're already plenty familiar with the concept of the performative artist. The artist pours so much heart and soul into their work that there is nothing left for their own life. That is exactly what both these films explore, the intersections between identity and fame, and how we can hold on to our identities as existential circumstances warp around us. This message is especially important today when social media can put millions of eyes onto anybody, giving us all our 15 minutes of fame. Jay Kelly speaks to our values, our work-life balance, the connections we come to cherish, and what it means to save our sense of self from 100 figurative deaths. And there would be no Jay Kelly without Sullivan's Travels.
There's a lot to be said for making people laugh. Did you know that's all some people have? It isn't much, but it's better than nothing in this cockeyed caravan. Boy.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Off Book. If you enjoyed this analysis, please be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more deep dives into the stage, screen, and most importantly, the pages of words that lay the foundation for the stories we love. Thanks for watching.